He is U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Bales.
Our very freedom came under attack.
My government put enemy terrorists on the stand against me to keep me in prison for the rest of my life.
You know, there's no CSI stuff, there's no DNA, there's no fingerprints.
The Bobby that I knew is not the Bobby that could have done that.
Every soldier's story begins long before the battlefield, before the uniform, before the weight of duty. It begins in childhood, in families, in neighborhoods, in the quiet moments that shape who a person becomes. For Robert Bales, his story began in the summer of 1973 in the working-class community of Norwood, Ohio. Born the youngest of 5 children, Robert's life was set against the backdrop of a country changing, a nation recovering from Vietnam, yet still holding tightly to traditions of faith, family, and community. Norwood was the kind of place where people looked out for one another, where neighbors waved across lawns, where churches stood at the center of life. And it was in this landscape that Robert grew up. A boy shaped not by privilege, but by perseverance. This is the story of his beginning, a story of roots, of growth, of becoming a soldier.
While obviously I didn't know him as a kid, I have heard lots of stories from his family, his mom, his dad, his brothers, his sister-in-laws, and the stories that Bob has shared with me have always made me smile.
The Bales family was like many Midwestern families of their time, hardworking, faithful, united. Robert's parents raised their 5 children with values passed down from generations: honesty, responsibility, and above all, the importance of family. Dinner at the Bales house wasn't just a time to eat. It was a time to talk, to laugh, to debate, to share stories of the day. For young Robert, the youngest child, these dinners were lessons in listening and observing. He watched his older brothers navigate the world, and in their footsteps, he began to learn. Being the youngest meant competition, for attention, for space, for identity. But it also meant protection. His siblings looked out for him. They shaped him. And through them, Robert learned early that family meant loyalty. In those early years, his world was small but rich. The streets of Norwood, the local Catholic school, the neighborhood playground. These were the places that formed his sense of belonging.
In a time before smartphones, before the internet, a boy like Robert learned life through face-to-face encounters. Through long summer days outside. Through the small rituals of community life. It was an ordinary childhood in many ways, and extraordinary in the way it laid the foundation for the man he would become.
A real caring, real understanding individual, even from a real young age.
He was a teenager. He helped a disabled boy next door. He was his caretaker before and after school. Most kids would have been out and about caring about themselves.
Bobby and my son were best friends.
An uncommonly kind friend, because Durham's son Wade, 2 years older than Bales, is severely disabled.
Robert grew up with the rhythms of small-town America. He played outside until the sun dipped low and the streetlights flickered on. He rode his bike with friends through neighborhoods where everyone knew your name. He fished in creeks, tossed footballs in the backyard, and spent winters bundled against Ohio's bitter cold. At Norwood High School, Robert found his identity on the football field.
He told me about his high school years, how he was the co-captain of the football team, and the student body president, both things which didn't surprise me, honestly.
He wasn't the star. He wasn't the one who scored the most points or had his name in the paper every week. But coaches and teammates noticed something more enduring: his determination.
He was one of the better football players and captain, and always a heavy lifter in the weight room. Very outgoing, funny, big smile.
He was the player who showed up early, who ran the drills with everything he had, who refused to quit when the practice got hard. That determination became Robert's signature. Not talent alone, not luck, but hard work. Jim Barr, Bales' high school football coach, mentioned that he is impressed with his passion for the game of football and his hometown, Norwood, Ohio.
Steve Burling says Bales was a big-hearted guy who cared for disabled youth while at Norwood High and was a leader both on and off the field.
Friends remember him as loyal, the kind of friend who stood by you when things got tough. He had a sense of humor, a quick smile, and a way of making people feel at ease.
Bobby was just a very understanding, very accepting kid.
High school wasn't just about academics or sports. For Robert, it was about belonging, about learning to be part of a team, about discovering that the strength of one person could be magnified when working together with others.
But he did share one story with me about how he learned to ballroom dance. I'm like, why did you learn to ballroom dance? And he said, well, I tried out for a play, The Princess and the Pea, and one of the things I had to do was learn how to dance. And that really did surprise me, because imagine him as a football player learning how to ballroom dance and being up on stage in a play, like that really actually did surprise me. But that's just who he is, right? He's always full of surprises and doing things that are outside his comfort zone, just to try them, just to live life.
By the time he graduated in 1991, Robert carried with him the quiet confidence of a young man who understood perseverance and who was ready for the wider world. In 1993, he enrolled at The Ohio State University in Columbus. There he played rugby and took on new challenges academically, while also interning with the investment firm Smith Barney. Those around him saw someone who pushed himself, someone who believed the next step was always earned. He moved into the financial sector. In 1996, he obtained his Series 7 stockbroker license and began working at a small investment firm. He quickly became trusted, and between 1998 and September 1999, he helped the company open a new office in Miami, Florida. Afterward, he returned to Columbus, continuing his work with the same firm. Then, in September 2000, he made another move, this time to Jensen Beach, Florida, working as a futures broker in West Palm Beach. The pace was fast. The expectations were high. His life up to this point had been shaped by responsibility, adaptation, and the constant push to prove himself. This was the life he built before the military.
Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson.
I'm Diane Sawyer, and it's Tuesday, September 11th, 2001.
Oh, shit! Perhaps purposefully into, oh my goodness.
Oh, God.
There's another one.
153.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
September 11th, 2001. America changed forever. Like millions of Americans, he watched the events unfold in disbelief. The towers falling, the smoke rising, the country in shock. For Robert, the tragedy stirred something deep. A call, a duty, a decision. 4 years after his conviction, realizing that he would never get out of prison, Bob made the difficult decision to break the prison's rules and use a contraband cell phone to tell the world his story in his own words. he was sent to solitary confinement as punishment for using the contraband cell phone. The following is actual footage from inside Bob's prison cell.
After September 11th, I raised my hand and I went for you. I went for the American people. I went for my family.
He was like a lot of young men and women who decided that not on our watch. You don't do this to our country.
At 28 years old, older than most recruits, Robert enlisted in the United States Army. This was more than a career move, it was a calling.
He felt that he needed something bigger in his heart and his mind and his soul, so that's why he went into the military.
To him, patriotism was not a slogan, it was a call to action.
He joined after September 11th happened. He felt very strongly about protecting his country and his family.
Mark Bales, the older brother of Robert Bales, recalls the day he received a call from Robert following the events of September 11th. During that call, Robert said, "We grew up poor and didn't have much, but this country gave us opportunities I never thought possible. Now, it's time for me to serve my country." He did not enlist for glory or recognition. He enlisted to serve. And soon, service would demand every ounce of courage, every moment of resilience, and would leave scars. Some visible, many invisible. At Fort Benning, Georgia, Robert endured the crucible of basic training, the long marches, the early mornings, the relentless discipline. Where others struggled, Robert's determination carried him forward. He wasn't the youngest, he wasn't the fastest, but he was steady, resilient, unbreakable. Soon after, he joined the 3rd Stryker Brigade Combat Team, 2nd Infantry Division, stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington. Here, Robert discovered the same sense of team he had once felt on the football field. But this team was stronger, bound by service, forged by shared sacrifice.
He served under me for my entire time as platoon leader. That was almost 3 years, and he was one of my best guys. He was a very solid NCO. I never had any issues with him. You could give him any job; it didn't matter what it was, and he got it done. He always got his guys trained up well.
2003, Robert found what would become the center of his life: love.
I met Bob, actually, it's a very interesting story. He was walking into the bar and I was walking out of the bar. It is actually a casino in Tacoma, Washington. And so here is this gentleman walking in saying, it's like, ladies, don't leave. I just got here. And the night kind of went on, got to know him. He actually ended up dancing with me and he actually dipped me that night. So there was a little bit of magic in the air, but he was like, actually, I'm leaving in a month for a tour in Iraq. And red flags go up in my head thinking, oh my gosh, run. We ended up having a couple dates and then he went on deployment literally a month later.
When Bob deployed for the first time, their relationship continued through letters and messages, becoming a pen-pal connection during that deployment, which deepened their bond.
While Bob was deployed, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I remember sitting with that news, trying to wrap my mind around what it meant. I had no idea how to tell him. Here he was, half a world away, in a war zone, and I was about to tell him that the woman he'd been writing to might one day end up in a wheelchair. When he came home from that first deployment, I decided to tell him right away. I told him everything, and then I said, you have a choice. This is my reality, and I really don't know what the future holds. If you want to walk away now, I understand. He got quiet for a moment. Then he looked at me and said, are you going to get one of those mechanical wheelchairs? I laughed a little and said, I guess so. And then he smiled and said, good, because I'm going to ride in it with you. That's Bob. He has a way of taking the heaviest moments and filling them with humor and love. It reminded me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up for each other, no matter what the future looks like. And that's what we've done every single day since.
He married Carrie, and together they built a family. Before Bob's second deployment, Carrie became pregnant with their first child. While Bob was overseas, their daughter was born. He missed her birth by just 3 days, a moment that stayed with him. When he returned home, Bob didn't hesitate. He stepped fully into fatherhood, learning, adjusting, committing himself completely to the role. Changing diapers, late-night feedings, holding his daughter through sleepless nights, absorbing every second he had been denied. Before Bob's third deployment, Carrie became pregnant again. This time, Bob made it home in time. He was there to witness the birth of their son, Bobby, to hold him, to be present, to anchor himself in that moment before returning to duty. Only after Bobby's birth did Bob go back to finish his deployment. Friends remember the way his face lit up when he spoke about his children. He was proud, not of titles or possessions, but of the chance to be dad.
I have never met anyone that is a better dad. I grew up with a great dad, but Bob is actually even better than my dad.
Happy guy, full of life.
Life brought challenges, bills to pay, responsibilities to juggle. But Robert and Carrie faced those challenges side by side, with the strength of their commitment and the love of their family. For Robert, family wasn't just part of his life, it was the reason for everything he did. Leaving behind his young wife Carrie and the familiar streets of Ohio, he embraced a path that would test him beyond anything he could imagine.
It wasn't just a job. It was who he was. One of the first Christmas gifts he ever gave to me was a crystal keepsake, clear, solid, and weighty in my hands. Inside it, laser etched into the glass, are the Twin Towers, standing tall behind an American flag. He told me he wanted me to remember why he was away and what he was fighting for. Every time I look at it, the light catches on the flag inside and makes it shimmer, like it's still waving. It's simple but powerful. That little piece of crystal has followed me through every move, every chapter. It's a reminder of the day that changed our country and of the man who felt called to defend it.
Bales deployed 4 times over more than a decade, spending over 42 months in combat zones. He faced insurgent attacks, navigated dangerous terrain, and led men under fire.
Bob was already in the military when we met, but he kept re-enlisting. Not because it was easy, but because he loved the men beside him. He would always say, "I loved the life, and I loved the guys to my left and to my right." He felt a deep sense of responsibility, a calling to serve and to protect.
In 2007, during the Battle of Zarqa in Iraq, Bob's leadership was tested under extreme conditions. He moved his men to safety under fire, organized defensive positions, and demonstrated courage under pressure.
You have been talking to some of his friends from early deployments, I guess. What do they tell you?
I talked to Captain Chris Alexander, who, to my surprise, couldn't have been more glowing in describing Staff Sergeant Bales. Said that I would want a Bales in every company I worked in. Said he was a professional soldier, totally on guard at all times for risk, interested in protecting his colleagues and men, and did his job admirably.
The thing that I really remember is him in his uniform with his pants tucked inside of his boots. It was just, he was crisp, clean, military.
Yet every deployment left a mark. The invisible scars of trauma, fatigue, and the mental burden carried by soldiers in endless conflict.
But 4 tours in less than 10 years is too much for anyone. That much time in combat changes a person. It leaves marks you can't see. And yet, even after everything, he never stopped loving the men he served with and the country he fought for.
For those who served under him, Bob was more than a sergeant. He was a protector, a steady hand amid the storm.
Bales is an extremely professional NCO. No job too menial or too dangerous, and he would always get it done, and get it done very well.
4 tours and 42 months of combat later, Bob had demonstrated courage, leadership, and a willingness to sacrifice for those under his command. But even valor has its costs.
It wasn't until after, I think, the second deployment that he told me, he's like, Carrie, I've been blown up 9 times. And I'm like, what? They didn't even tell us that these things happened.
The relentless strain of combat began to take its toll on his mind, on his body, and on the man who had once answered the call with unflinching resolve.
Let's just picture yourself in a location. The base he's in is probably 50 yards by 50 yards. That includes sleeping locations, showers, if he's got showers. Very, very limited space. I'll give you the example of a location I was at, probably similar. I showered once a week. There were never really any hot meals, so I basically lived on Pop-Tarts, but mostly it was MREs, which is those meals in a box. Let's just put yourself there. Forget about the outside stress with the dangers of mortars, gunfire, IEDs. Let's just put you in that location, isolated, maybe 1 meal a day, 120 degrees, maybe 90 at night, no air conditioning, and you got to live like that for 9 months. And that's not counting like I said, the stress of the dangers when you go out.
We know he was really, had been injured twice, fairly seriously, lost a piece of his foot in one, rolled over in Iraq in his Stryker vehicle, and had a concussion that was described by the military as mild, so he's treated for a brain injury.
I also read in part of an article that the day before all of this happened, one of his friends got very seriously injured by an IED.
Yes, hit him very hard, and he just cares about his soldiers so much that he didn't want anything to happen. There was one gentleman lost his leg, and then I think other people got injured.
The night of March 11th, 2012, the Kandahar incident. Shortly after 3 a.m., Bob left Belambay, the remote outpost where his unit was based. It was a pitch-black Afghan night, cold, silent, and tense. The surrounding fields had been the site of numerous IED strikes, and the base itself had been attacked multiple times in the preceding weeks. Bob moved alone, following the same narrow dirt paths his platoon had patrolled for months. Bob reached Naja Bien first. The village was nearly silent, but the terrain itself was familiar. This was where the unit had previously found active IED trigger points, HME jugs, sniper rifle caches, Taliban communication devices. These discoveries had turned even routine patrols into high-risk engagements. Bob navigated between mud walls and irrigation ditches, passing homes that his unit had searched before. Dogs barked. A few lanterns flickered. People stayed inside. The middle of the night was when Taliban fighters traditionally moved. Witness accounts later confirmed shots were fired in this village, though the sequence and number remained debated in various reports. From Naja Bien, Bob continued to Alokazai, the second village, long considered the more dangerous location. This was the village intelligence described as an IED manufacturing point, a Taliban medical stop, a transit route for fighters avoiding main roads. Moving along the narrow trail between the two villages took roughly 20 to 30 minutes on foot. It was the same route soldiers used during scheduled patrols. When Bob arrived, Alokazai was dark and enclosed, its houses set tighter together than those in Naja Bien. The air was still. No voices outside. No lights beyond the faint glow of cooking fires dying for the night. This village, too, reported shots fired during the incident. Because Alokazai was known for Taliban activity, soldiers usually expected resistance here. IEDs, snipers, nighttime movement. Earlier missions had proven the area was a staging point for attacks against U.S. troops. Whether Bob perceived threats that night, misinterpreted movement, or acted under the influence of trauma and psychological breakdown remains the core of the debate. But what is clear is that this was a village his unit had long feared. After the events in the two villages, Bob began the long walk back to Belambay. The sun had still not risen. The desert air was freezing. He arrived at the base gate, surrendered his weapon.
He is U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Bales.
So a lot of people probably wonder where I was, what I was thinking the day that I found out about the incident.
He has an early memory of that evening, and he has a later memory of that evening, but he doesn't have memory of in between.
Post-mission debriefs later clarified that the locations Bob moved through were known Taliban strongholds at the time.
He told me that they had been to both locations on previous missions several times and had found IED making materials and had found sniper rifles and things that were not farmers, right? Like they had been there before because it was an issue. It was a threat.
Eyewitness accounts described a soldier moving swiftly and violently. The sequence of events tragically clear, but emotionally chaotic for those who survived.
I think everyone has the same question because everyone knew the same Bobby. What happened? What happened?
Do you think that he was in a clear state of mind?
No.
Investigators later reconstructed his movements from Afghan authorities, base reports, and survivor testimony.
But I learned the hard way that the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, is not the same as the civilian system we all believe in.
Defense experts pointed to combat fatigue, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and side effects from mefloquine, an anti-malarial known to cause psychotic reactions.
An anti-malarial drug which has been linked to serious mental health problems should be used only as a last resort, according to a report out today.
He definitely took it in his very first deployment between 2003 and 2004. And the thing about mefloquine is that it doesn't leave your system. So it's not like something that you have to be on in order for it to have effects on you.
In 2009, the military announced that this drug called mefloquine is in fact very, very dangerous, which is what I've been reporting on for many years, and basically said let's only use this drug in very, very limited circumstances in places like Afghanistan, and let's definitely not give it to people who have any brain problems. Now the reason why is because this is a relatively unusual drug called a quinolone, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier and goes into the human brain, and in certain brains can do very serious damage. So the military announced that this drug should not be given to people who have brain problems like traumatic brain injuries. What the military has discovered is that out on the battlefield, those rules aren't being followed. And some soldiers who do have these kinds of problems are getting this drug, and that obviously can increase the likelihood of a problem like a psychotic break.
So before mefloquine, he was a very typical army officer. He was well organized, he was very in control. After he took mefloquine, his personality changed. He initially became very depressed and had suicidal thoughts. Gradually over time, he became paranoid. He thought that people were talking about him, that they were colluding behind the scenes, and he just became quite a different person altogether.
The immediate impact of taking mefloquine was so well known that soldiers had special nicknames for the day of the week when they had to swallow the little white pill.
It was either Manic Monday, Terror Tuesday, Wacky Wednesday, or Fearful Friday, you know.
And what was happening on those days that were given names like Wacky Wednesday and Terror Tuesday?
The dreams were just so vile and so haunting. A lot of troops were lashing out and frustrated and very, very angry.
I remember him talking about having hallucinations during different deployments, not just this last one. But yeah, he definitely remembers taking that drug.
The stresses on these men with the things they're having to deal with, if you then add in another unknown factor, it's just too much and unnecessary because there are other drugs. In view of the dangers, in view of what they're exposed to, and the fact they take it for long periods of time, unlike a holidaymaker who might take it for a very short time, there are other safer alternatives and they should be being used.
When Jimmy Corrigan left on deployment in the Navy 3 years ago, he was in the best physical shape of his life. Today, he can't walk without a cane. He gets angry for no reason and has been hospitalized twice to prevent suicide.
Keep your stand up straight.
2 military doctors say Corrigan suffered a brain injury after taking the anti-malaria drug mefloquine.
The prosecution maintained deliberate intent.
In the military, the commander picks the panel. Panel is kind of like a jury, but the commander picks that panel. The same people who serve under him, the same people whose careers he controls. That's called undue command influence. Imagine walking into a courtroom knowing the very person that brought the charges against you also chose the people who will decide your husband's fate.
I was stunned. I mean, it's like I said, it's just not him, you know. Something bad had to happen to him to cause something like that. I mean, you know, I've seen it termed that there's 2 very diverging pictures of Bales, and it's true, you know, because he's a really good NCO, a great soldier, very dedicated, service member, and then there's this, allegations of this guy that killed people, and and so that should be a clue that something really bad happened. What went wrong, and that's really what people need to think about.
Yeah, I have PTSD, and yes, I have TBI, but that doesn't mean that these other things can't be true too.
The actions of that night were wrong. There is no justification. But the story of Bales cannot be fully understood without looking at the mental strain he carried.
I think there was so many dynamics that was going on with him. He wasn't himself, wasn't right mind, and I don't think they addressed that.
People are people to him. People are people. I've never heard him say that he hated anyone.
Defense experts would later highlight extreme combat fatigue, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and the psychotic side effects of mefloquine as factors affecting his state of mind.
I met this doctor who pretty much told me I was delusional. And I believed him. See, I hadn't really slept for a few days before I did what I did. And I hadn't slept a few days after.
Well, we do know that once someone does have PTSD, that a subsequent trauma makes things dramatically worse. Same thing can be said for a traumatic brain injury. We also know that these conditions can increase the risk of violent behavior. While the majority of individuals with these conditions won't commit violence, it does increase the risks above the baseline. It's my personal experience that there are many individuals suffering in the military who do feel trapped, who feel command pressure to redeploy, even though they don't feel capable of doing so, and feel barred by the medical process. At Fort Lewis specifically, it's been well written about that the medical board system denied people a correct diagnosis of PTSD, and that's something I've personally witnessed. Factors like that can unfortunately make a soldier feel trapped and perhaps more likely to do things they would later regret.
Conditions the Army knew existed, but failed to treat.
He saw people killed literally standing right next to him, and there was an incident right before these allegations where one of his fellow soldiers was mortally wounded.
Something terribly, terribly has happened to him, and I think anybody in the military that's been in combat certainly understands the kind of stress these guys have been going through.
He had suffered concussions and other injuries in previous deployments. Yet the Army deployed him repeatedly without adequate medical oversight, counseling, or rest. His warnings were ignored. His mental health needs were dismissed. In this environment, a soldier already under immense stress was sent back into combat, expected to perform as if untouched by trauma.
So you just take that stress, try to just do that 24/7 for 8 or 9 months and see how your mind goes. Try to be strong every day. Now put on all of the stress when you leave that front gate, where when you leave, you know that every yard you go, there could be an IED that goes off. You could get hit with machine guns, you can get rocketed, and that's every yard, every mile that you're traveling, and that's in 120-degree heat.
After the incident, the Army's investigation was deeply flawed. Key forensic evidence was compromised.
There's no CSI stuff, there's no DNA, there's no fingerprints.
Witnesses were flown in under aliases, some with uncertain credibility.
The witnesses that they brought over to testify against Bob, which has never been done before in the history of this country. The prosecution team touted them as farmers or gardeners, just innocent civilians. And what we ended up finding out after we asked about who these witnesses were and could we identify them and what they actually do, and we were blocked in several different ways by the judge and the prosecution to really get any true information. And what we ended up finding out is that they had their fingerprints and skin found on IEDs. In fact, they may have been farmers and gardeners, but they also built IEDs to kill American service members.
To testify against Bales at sentencing. Specifically, for the first time in history, the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Department of the Army flew known enemies of our nation, terrorists, bomb makers, from the battlefields in Afghanistan to the United States while our nation was at war, to testify against Bales, an active duty U.S. serviceman, without disclosing their true identities and anti-American activities.
5 guys that testified against me were terrorists. Meaning, they made bombs and then placed IEDs. We have DNA evidence. We have grid locations. We have everything. But what's worse is, when they were bringing them into the country, into the United States, I just can't believe they did this. But when they brought them in the United States, they put them in these databases, found out that they had been wanted, or found out that they were involved with making of IEDs and bombs, and instead of arresting them, they put them on the stand against me. My government put enemy terrorists on the stand against me to keep me in prison for the rest of my life.
Prosecution used an alias social security numbers, false visas, alias names, and stated that the witnesses were government contractors to place them on Delta Airlines from Atlanta, Georgia to Seattle, Washington, among truly innocent and unaware American citizens.
When I'm looking at the case, we know what happened that night, but when they talk about the witnesses, I'm saying I don't see any backgrounds on the witnesses. I have this Excel sheet. We could do the 5 W's on people with the similar names as the witnesses and come up with a picture of what the backgrounds might be if they had done the records check, which I think they did, but just didn't disclose it. So we came up with a background on all the witnesses as close as we could come. Now remember, we did not get their biometrics. You know what I mean? I did not physically get their fingerprints. I did not physically get their DNA. So I don't know 100% who they are because they didn't give me the report. I'm going on a filtered search on people with the same names, same area, same date, same places of occurrence of IED events. For me, if somebody doesn't produce something to me, there's got to be a reason why.
Right.
I had just put in a filter of in and around the Panjwai district. The search I had was IED activity. And like I said before, most guys I've dealt with in the ID business, you're in the drug business, you're in the guns business, you're in the weapons business. They're all in the same networks. Now again, not 100%, but it's the picture we wanted to present to say, this is what we think would have came up if a proper background check was done. All we want to know is, what is the background check?
I'm the only person in the history of America to have the enemy during combat testify against him in an American court of law.
That was taken from an interview after the incident, and they caught the photo of his tattoo on his hand, and that's a legitimate Taliban tattoo. Why it wasn't addressed during that interview, I don't know. Why that wasn't addressed in the courtroom, I don't know. I mean, that would be one of my questions. Can you explain a tattoo on your hand? What we think with our initial search, they were affiliated with IED events, which tends to be affiliated with the Taliban. Now understand this, for them to come to the United States, they have to do a full biometrics and background check on these individuals. They have to. So, like I said, if everything was clean, there was no records, why not turn it over? That box is checked, move on. But if something derogatory came off, that's fine too. They should just provide it, but they didn't. There's a very good possibility that these guys were involved. If they weren't, prove us wrong.
Critical defense testimony, including accounts of Bales's mental state, was excluded.
Do I believe that I have issues? Yes. Issues go all the way back to 2003 and my first deployment. And then the TBI comes in probably after my second or in the middle of my second. We were on a patrol heading into Solder City, and we took a pretty big IED. I really didn't pay any attention to it back then. The next day I was throwing up, and pretty sure I had a concussion the next day. And you know, since that time I would get mild to severe headaches from time to time. So
it's not a matter of how severe the head injury is. You can have bad changes even with mild head injuries. People can have very long-term psychological impact. They can have depression, they can develop anxiety disorders. They oftentimes have difficulty doing things like multitasking.
The Article 32 hearing, designed to ensure a fair review, was stacked against him. Evidence favorable to the defense was suppressed.
Even though we had what we thought was good representation, due to the top secret nature of being in a war with another country, there were many items that our civilian representation didn't have access to.
And the prosecution moved forward under intense political pressure. President Obama, Secretary Panetta, and Afghan President Karzai demanded swift justice.
There aren't 12 jurors of your peers. There might be 5, and it doesn't have to be a unanimous vote. 2/3 of that panel can vote guilty, and that's enough to send someone to prison for life. Does that sound fair and just? Because to me it doesn't. Even if a commander wants to be fair, how can he ever be sure his panel isn't simply following the message that's been sent from above? It's not justice, that's pressure.
Diplomacy and optics took priority over thorough assessment or rehabilitation.
The government had the SOFA agreement they were trying to negotiate at the time. I know the Karzai government wanted me dead. The Secretary of Defense said they were going to charge me with a capital crime before any American investigator made it to the scene.
The United States takes this as seriously as if it was our own citizens and our own children who were murdered. I can assure the American people and the Afghan people that we will follow the facts wherever they lead us. And we will make sure that anybody who was involved is held fully accountable with the full force of the law.
Parole rules, unchanged for years, were abruptly revised just months before sentencing, ensuring life without parole. In court, even the lead prosecutor admitted that the trial process had been engineered to guarantee conviction.
Is politics driving this case? Unfortunately, I believe that it is.
In 2013, Bales was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. His years of service, his valor in combat, and the systemic failures that contributed to his condition were largely absent from public consideration.
They're saying Bobby did that, and I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. I can't believe it. The Bobby that I knew is not the Bobby that could have done that.
Bob never claimed insanity. To him, admitting mental illness was a betrayal of strength. It was shaped by his upbringing and the Army's culture of endurance. Yet in refusing to label himself broken, he faced the full weight of the law. Behind bars, Bob remained committed to his family. Carrie raised their children alone, carrying the weight of his absence.
From inside those walls, he's earned his bachelor's degree, he's finished his master's degree, and become a licensed barber in the state of Kansas. He's helped other men find their confidence again. He's mentored, he's taught, he's prayed with people who've lost hope.
People always ask me what I do all day. Most of the time I try to finish my homework, finish my degree. And a lot of times I read my Bible. I think one of the things I realize is that you ask yourself why everything went the way it went.
He became a father, a student, and a mentor, even as the world judged him harshly. The Bales case highlights profound questions about the treatment of soldiers in combat. Other U.S. soldiers convicted of wartime crimes have received clemency, and Taliban prisoners have been released in peace agreements.
These men are former Taliban fighters who've just been released from prison.
An American soldier who put his life on the line to protect not only his brothers in arms, but the whole country is in prison rotting, while Taliban are out killing more and more every day. Please help my family and bring my dad home.
The war is over. The Taliban are free. And yet Robert Bales, a man who gave everything to his country, remains behind bars.
What I wish people knew about my husband is that he's not the man they've read about in the headlines. He's a man who loves deeply. He loves God, his country, his family, and his friends. He's loyal to a fault. That kind of love isn't loud. It's steady. And it shows up every single day.
This story does not excuse the tragedy of March 11th, 2012. It does not diminish the lives that were lost or the pain that endures. Instead, it seeks to shed light on a deeper truth: the immense human cost of war, the failures of a justice system swayed by political pressure, and the urgent need for compassion toward those who have served.
The biometrics is a side thing. The main thing is the methylene, Bob's health. He's had 4 tours, injured, so he definitely didn't get a fair trial. No way.
Justice is not achieved by casting aside the very people who have sacrificed so much in the name of duty. And in the case of Robert Bales, a fair and honest reckoning, one that considers mental health and the full complexity of the human condition, is long overdue.
He knows he can't take back what's been done, but he wants to bring closure as much as possible to this tragedy.
You know, I just want people to know that Sergeant Bales is, you know, a solid guy. A lot can happen in 5 years, but that is not the person that I know, and that you know, he has a family, he has a lot of friends. You know, we're all still very much behind him because, you know, he is a good guy.
Carrie made the decision to move the family closer to Bob.
He's a proud soldier, he's a patriot, he's a strong American, loves his country, loves his family, loves God. And the people that were witnesses against him, these people were Taliban. They were not innocent farmers. I think that's another fallacy that is out there.
So, you know, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening to me. And, you know, God bless the United States of America.
And it breaks my heart to say this, but the people who fight to defend our constitutional rights are the ones who lose their rights the moment they put on the uniform. That has to change. And until it does, I'll keep telling this story, because the truth deserves to be heard.